Okay, the title of this video is going to be, What's the Frequency, Handsome? Go Ask the Woodpecker. Now the name Kenneth means handsome, and the woodpecker is something that is located or was located in Russia. So I'm going to combine several videos together and talk to you a little bit about each one. So we're going to learn first of all about the incident that supposedly happened to Dan Rather, the news reporter, and this little video here will summarize it for you. So on October 4th, news anchor Dan Rather was walking to his apartment in Manhattan when suddenly a man attacked him from behind. While he punched and kicked Dan Rather, the assailant repeatedly asked him one strange question: "Kenneth, what's the frequency?" The attacker punched Dan Rather until the doorman of his apartment building ran outside to help Rather. Then he fled the scene without robbing anything. Dan Rather suffered bruises and was treated shortly in a hospital. The motive for the attack stayed a mystery due to the strange question. Rather described the attacker as a well-dressed white man in his 30s. He was about 6 foot tall and had a mustache. The incident remained unsolved for many years, and the attacker couldn't be found. The whole episode was so strange that many doubted Rather's veracity. The question of this bizarre incident, Kenneth, what's the frequency, became part of the pop culture. David Letterman and others referred to it often. 8 years later, in 1994, the alternative rock band REM released a song with the question as the title on their Monster album. Michael Stipe, the lead singer of REM and writer of the song, said the song is about Generation X and the influence of the mass media. The song tells the story of an older person who wants to understand what drives the younger generation, but ultimately fails in his attempt. Then finally, in 1997, the mystery was solved. It turned out that a man named William Taggart, who was already in jail, attacked Dan Rather that day. William Taggart believed that the major broadcasting companies beamed signals directly into his head and sent him messages. He thought if he knew the frequency they used for this, he'd be able to stop the companies. That was the reason for the strange question. In 1994, Taggart tried to enter the Today Show studio and killed one stagehand because of his delusion. His psychiatrist gave the tip. Dan Rather subsequently recognized Taggart as the attacker and could corroborate what Taggart said about how he attacked Rather. William Taggart was serving a 12-year to 25-year sentence for manslaughter and was paroled in 2010. He believed to be living in New York City. Okay, now, that's the story, and let's pick it up here with another video.
Hi, welcome back to the program, ladies and gentlemen. REM, great band. Have been a great band for a long time. We're on an old show of ours like 12 years ago, and this is tonight will be the first night we've had them back here with us. We couldn't be happier about it. Were you at the Garden? They're playing 3 nights this week here in New York at Madison Square Garden. Did you go down there last night?
Tomorrow.
So you weren't there last night?
No.
I was there last night, and something odd. I don't know if this is part of the show or what. We have videotape of it. Last night, REM at Madison Square Garden. And tell me if you don't think this is strange. Roll it, Jerry. Here we go.
Okay, that was supposedly the band REM and supposedly Dan Rather with the band REM singing. Who knows, it could have been somebody disguised as Dan Rather. Who knows all the details, but the idea is this song came to preeminence in the rock music industry, and the question remains rather mysterious and haunts people because it sounds so bizarre. But my thesis is it is absolutely not bizarre, and that is the reason to pay great attention to it, because whenever the media tries to incite you to dismiss something, that's when you should wake up and say, wait a minute, that's exactly what I'm going to research. So I'm going to jump to some other videos now and take you away from the band REM and the incident, take you off to the far corners of the world, over to Russia, so that we can meet the woodpecker and ask the woodpecker, what's the frequency, handsome, or what's the frequency, Kenneth?
In the 1970s, during the Cold War, if you wanted to see whether someone was launching an intercontinental ballistic missile at your country, you...
Okay, let's pause for a minute. The intercontinental ballistic missiles are a hoax. Nuclear missiles are a hoax. He's giving you the devil sign. But the reason I'm using the video is to kind of show you the actual site of the location of what's called the woodpecker.
Had two options. Put a satellite in space, which at that point was expensive, impractical, and likely to fail, or build a radar system. But radar can only see to the horizon. It'll show you...
Okay, basically the disguise is a radar system to detect incoming missiles. Don't think so? I think as part of what's the frequency, handsome? What's the frequency, Kenneth? It's a matter of mind control through the broadcasting of signals, and perhaps in this case the signals are actually worldwide.
Missile in flight, but by the time you've seen it, your chain of command might not have time to react. You need to know it's launched when it's launched. You need radar powerful enough to bounce off the ionosphere, spread out for thousands of miles, and still have enough signal to be detectable after it bounces back. You need megawatts of power and one of the biggest radar arrays ever constructed. You need something like this. Welcome to the Duga 3 array in Chernobyl. This was known in the West as the Russian woodpecker. For more than a decade, it randomly hopped shortwave frequencies, trying to find the best one to get a return signal, sending out a repetitive that sounded like a woodpecker. It was so powerful that countries around the world filed official complaints with the Soviet Union, and there was a small industry of woodpecker filters or Moscow mufflers that would notch it out on your radio. There's another one about 60 kilometres away. They act as a pair. One transmits, one receives. And they need to be this big to get any sort of resolution. So you can tell roughly, very roughly, where the missile is headed. But the really clever thing is how any radar system like this can tell the difference between a missile and the ground. Because this isn't like pointing a radar into the air. If you're bouncing the signal, then the ground is going to reflect back just as much as the missile that is flying above it. How do you tell the difference? Doppler effect. The same way that the siren on a police car moving towards you sounds higher, the radar reflections from a missile will be at a higher frequency. And missiles move at speeds measured in miles per second. So Duga didn't listen for the same frequency that it transmitted. It listened for a slightly higher one. If it found that return frequency, well, it didn't happen. Fortunately. All that transmission power, all that disruption was for nothing, wonderfully, because no one ever launched, and somehow, despite everything, humanity got through the Cold War.
Okay, the Cold War is a hoax. The idea of having a standoff with the United States and Russia with nuclear missiles going to exclusively blow up the world on either end is a complete and total hoax. So, perhaps the woodpecker is actually an instrument used for mind control throughout the world, bouncing a tremendous signal up in the ionosphere, coming back to Earth, and then that same signal sort of ricocheting or bouncing off the Earth, and in a way covering that entire area where that signal is bouncing off the ionosphere and coming back to Earth, so that that whole region of where that signal is going to is smothered in a certain frequency. And again, back to the song, if the frequency is aligned with the brain in such a way as to be sending messages directly to the individual, which go right through the skull and then is interpreted by the brain, you have an amazing, massive, mass-scale, psychotronic weapon for mind control around the world. So let's go to another video that talks a little more about the woodpecker.
In the 1970s and 1980s, if you were to tune into shortwave radio frequencies across the world, you would hear a rat-tat-tat noise permeating from seemingly nowhere. This ticking sound infused into communication networks around the world and even disrupted television signals. It was soon found that the signal was coming from a massive device built by the Russians, nicknamed the Woodpecker, a reference to its repetitive tapping noise. The Woodpecker was a network of antennas with 2 arrays hidden deep in the woods near Chernobyl, Ukraine, and a third one on the Russian Pacific coast. This mysterious and obtrusive antenna network together formed an early...
Okay, there's a film out that ties the woodpecker in with Chernobyl disaster and so forth, which I think is completely false, again, trying to mislead people about what was going on and what is still going on, which is basically just mind control. So the current film out about this, I believe, is just another hoax, but I believe the true essence of the meaning of the woodpecker is connected with and related to the Dan Rather incident where the crazed man, Taggart, asked him, "What's the frequency, Kenneth?" Now, most likely, Dan Rather is not the man or the woman's real name. That the name is always a stage name. So by identifying the news reporter as Kenneth, he might have actually been invoking a name that that he goes by for his, quote, real life, or perhaps even another identity. They may have several identities, these actors that play roles. Now he's showing you footage of the site, I believe, which is near Chernobyl.
warning radar system called Duga that the Soviets implemented to detect incoming ballistic missiles. It's hard to grasp the scale of this massive antenna array without reference. One near Chernobyl, the Duga 3 array, was 2,010 meters wide, 85 meters tall, and made up of more than 300 individual transmitters. That's the equivalent width of 4.5 Empire State Buildings laid end to end and the height of a 28-story building. The devices operated at extremely high power levels, requiring 10 million watts each, which was needed to achieve proper resolution. These power levels allowed the signals to reach massive distances without any form of amplification. The signal the antennas would output would bounce around frequencies in the range of 7 to 20 megahertz and had a bandwidth of 40 kilohertz. As the entire system was first shrouded in mystery to the rest of the world, the signal source was quickly triangulated by both hobbyists and NATO to be originating from modern-day Ukraine. Ham radio operators built Woodpecker silencing devices that would send out a wave essentially reverse to the signal transmitted from the Duga arrays.
Okay, so that might be a hint about how to stop these secret wave transmissions into our lives, would be to have a device that counteracts it.
Two opposite waves would cancel each other out, the same way that active noise cancelling works today, thus removing the annoying rat-tat-tat noise from radio waves. While the large antennas and the signals that exuded from them pestered the world's radio signals, they served a rather innovative purpose at the time. The signal worked by detecting small variances in a return signal from the radio waves it transmitted. The ground would naturally return a signal bounced back from the transmitted waves, but they would be essentially the same as those transmitted. transmitted. Instead of listening for this return, receiving arrays would listen for the transmitted signal at a slightly higher pitch. Thanks to something called the Doppler effect, a missile flying through the air would return a higher-pitched signal. Much like how a police siren sounds higher-pitched when it's coming towards you, the return signal...
Okay, keep in mind all this about the radar and detecting missiles and everything is basically just BS, and the real purpose of these signals sent out is indeed for mind control and to send message in a way subliminally that you really don't know exists, but you can actually read and interpret them in your brain. It seems to be a concept that that many folks would not believe in, but the truth of the matter is we're constantly surrounded by radio frequency signals. And just a simple use of your Wi-Fi in your home, you're surrounded by radio frequency signals. So what's so hard to believe about the fact this can be done on a massive scale and done over entire regions?
bounced off a missile would have a higher frequency. By tracking this change, the Soviets could detect and track missiles at great distances. Luckily, a higher-pitched return was never detected, because if it was, a nuclear war likely would have broken out. When the Cold War...
No, there's no such thing as a nuclear war, so let me debunk and speak over these ones that create these videos. And they do a very nice job, and I'd like to acknowledge that I'm borrowing several videos, and I'm borrowing them because they do a wonderful job. But they're filled with nonsense and propaganda and stuff that they really truly believe. As at one time I did believe a lot of these hoaxes myself. So it's nothing at all to do with nuclear missiles. Nothing.
War came to an end in 1989 in the Soviet Union.
Now we're going to look at some other videos that's going to tell you no, it hasn't come to an end. And that's what we'll proceed to next. The whole idea that, oh, the Soviet Union folded and communism is dead and all of that. Oh, so the woodpecker has been silenced. No, not really. The woodpecker still exists, and the tap, 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 tap is still going on. So we'll move to some of those videos to show you that that's still a hoax too, that the woodpecker has been silenced forever. Okay, this is a borrowed video, and the gentleman that did this video, my hat goes off to all the ones I'm borrowing for their good work and for their good videos. So he's obviously a very ham operator.
Last night,
and listener.
I was listening to 60 meters. I'd cut a new antenna to try out on 60 meters, and I thought, oh, we'll see what I can pick up on 60 meters, and it was after dark. And I started hearing this really strange woodpecker sound, and I had heard of woodpecker sounds on HF before, and I thought, I think I remember that being something about Russian radar or something. So I started listening a little closer, and what you're going to see here in just a few minutes is my capture of this woodpecker sound on 60 meters on my Yaesu FTDX 3000 with the SDR Play SDR radio, and you can see it visually and audio, the audio on it, and it sounds just like a woodpecker. And I started doing a little research on it, and I found this website, a number of websites actually, it's on Wikipedia as well. But this website that I'm going to include here shows that it was discontinued and not in use now for years, if not a few decades ago. So it sounds exactly like what I heard last night. Sounds exactly like the woodpecker that was discontinued some time ago. So you can use your own judgment, and if you want to do a little research, you'll see what I heard and I saw, and check out the webpage I'll leave a link at the bottom of the video here so that you can click on the webpage and check it out. See what you think. And if you happen to hear what I heard on 60 meters or anywhere else, leave me a note down below, and we'll see if we can figure out what this is, other than maybe a woodpecker. 73s, check this video out here coming up. Okay, what you're hearing is the Russian woodpecker radar. From what I've been able to determine, the radar woodpecker was discontinued many moons ago, years ago. But just last night, I was hearing it on 60 meters. And I couldn't believe what I was hearing, so I started doing a little research. And I have found that the audio that we're hearing is identical to what they describe as the Russian woodpecker radar. 60 meters. Varies in frequency.
Okay, once again, it's not radar. The Russians were never worried about missiles coming in. Missiles are basically a hoax. Nuclear is a hoax, okay? And the fact that the Russians have been enemies of the U.S. is a hoax as well. It was the United States, Great Britain, and European nations that basically built up the Soviet Union or Russia. Okay, and you can go check out the work of Anthony Sutton. He will verify that for you. He was a researcher at the Hoover Institute, and basically without Western powers' influence and money and expertise, the Soviet Union would be completely outdated and have little to nothing. Okay, so it's not radar. And if it's not radar, the next best conclusion is it's for mind control.
But all real close to the same frequency in 60 meters. So what we have here is a web page that I found, and
okay, we're going to go to another YouTube report of the existence of the woodpecker sound and frequencies broadcast even long after it's supposedly stopped broadcasting. So it's still in existence. It just might be in different locations, and it might be the cooperation of all countries, not just Russia.
Hello again, it was the VK60S Farm with Amateur Radio.
Okay, I'm not real sure, but I believe this is from Australia, based on his accent and driving on the left-hand side. So he's trying to say that the woodpecker is still alive.
Got the 857 as a temporary installation in the four-wheel drive again on the Turling whip out there. It's coming up to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and as you can probably hear, you'll see that it's on 14.2 on 20 metres. There's an Italian guy there calling CQDX. He's been calling CQDX over some time, and there's a Russian radar, the Russian woodpecker, came up right on the right across that frequency anyway, and it's been banging away for some time. And of course, now started the camera, it stopped. I was just going to say, that's the Russian saying, "Hello, hello, comrade. We are here and we are watching."
Okay, he thinks the Russians are saying hello. I think what it is is people putting, through the frequencies used, putting messages directly into us, okay, that you really do not need a radio, receiver, television, whatever, that basically speaking, we are a receiver and we can pick up frequencies and decode them and never know that we picked them up and never know that we decoded them. And that is the masterful way of using these psychotronic weapons, weaponizing frequencies to implant thoughts and ideas into people. And I don't believe it's science fiction, I believe it's science fact. So let's take a look at another confirmation that these impulses that are being sent out all over the world are still in existence.
This radar was the most important in the entire network just because it faces United States of America through the North Pole. It was supposed to inform Soviets about the American missiles. The country had 3 facilities and there was no need to have more of them because they had to be really powerful. The range of each radar was up to 9,000 kilometers. So the plan was to place few radars facing different directions to be able to wrap with their signals the entire planet. This radar faces north towards USA. It covers the most important direction for Soviet Union. The USA, from where they were expecting missiles the most. Another radar faces east, where China and Japan are located, countries that were growing economies, that were increasing their military potential, and those radars had to send signals this way. This radar, while it was still working, got the nickname Russian Woodpecker. Just because in early 80s, after one of the modifications, radar started to interfere the work of civil aviation and work of European trade ships. It was making sharp tapping noises that were appearing from nowhere and that were disappearing the same way. And after none of the countries confessed who is doing that or what's the source of those noises, it was decided to ask NASA for help to find out what's that and where is that from. NASA satellites had to...
Okay, NASA in the Hebrew language means deception. So this English so-called abbreviation for national whatever is really the Hebrew word nasa, which means deception. So NASA is a deception, 100%. So don't believe anything about NASA and even what she's saying about the radar. Again, they're all what you would call cover stories. Okay, the true meaning, I believe, is found in mind control, not radar detecting missiles.
Fly around the planet and photograph all the suspicious things they had to discover on its surface. After they photographed these antennas, NASA representatives called to the Soviet Union to find out what's the purpose of this giant metallic construction in the middle of the forest. But Soviets, they couldn't say, yes guys, this is our radar, we're putting in danger your people, excuse us. They had to create some story. It was decided to lie. So guys from NASA were told that these antennas are used as help to Soviet TV stations. Guys from NASA were not stupid. Even though they didn't know that in the Soviet Union back then there were just 3 TV channels and 3 radars. The only reason why they couldn't state that this is the radar and you guys please stop using civilian frequencies for military purposes was lack of proofs. While they were looking for more proofs, the accident happened, the radar was turned off, and only in the 1990s, when this place became more or less available, when it became more or less discovered, it was confirmed that this is the thing creating those noises, and it was nicknamed Russian Woodpecker.
Okay, onward to another video using the helicopter radio receiver set. Oh, helicopter, excuse me. Excuse me on that one. It's a helicopter tour of the helicopter radio set. Okay, I think I want to stop it right here. And once again, just to summarize, what's the frequency, handsome? What's the frequency, Kenneth? Kenneth means handsome. Go ask the woodpecker. The woodpecker was supposedly a radar system in the Soviet Union to detect incoming nuclear missiles. Hoax. Most likely all that existed and still exists was to send out frequencies across the entire Earth so that there would be a means of mind control. Now, it might even be possible that the signal that's sent out is like a sort of a base signal, and the locals somehow could tie into that signal and send out their particular signal for their particular population. Now, I'm not real sure of everything, but my thesis is that the woodpecker has the answer to the question, what's the frequency, Kenneth? So I hope that you will tune in to the one true frequency, which is the Holy Word of God, and that your mind will be stayed on His Word and stayed on God. And the mind that is stayed on God will have perfect peace, no matter what type of weaponized form of psychotronic weapons or mind control propaganda is used on any of us. If you're grounded in the truth of God's Word, this will not affect you. And you can see 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, and you'll see the great coming of the lawless one. But if you're stayed in truth, the deceptions will not be able to get to you. Again, I thank you for watching and your patience if you got to the end of the video. I appreciate you watching it to the end. Thank you.